Well, hello and a very warm welcome. Thanks for tuning in to News 9 Live. The Paris pension protest, that's going to be our focus for the next couple of minutes. Because the 2023 French pension reform strike from Lakhs taking to the streets all across France. Tear gas filling the air over Place de la Bastille in Paris. Protesters and police clashing at several places, both parties needing medical attention, vehicles vandalized and rubbish set ablaze. France's pension reform law faces a key test. The protests over pension reforms don't seem to be dying. French authorities have claimed that some 3.8 lakh people took part in the protests across the country. And even though the number has gone down from recent weeks, unions are still managing to mobilize sizable amounts of crowds. The demonstrations are largely peaceful, though dozens of injuries have been reported amongst the police and the protesters as well. Now, the nationwide demonstrations occurred on the eve of an expected, ruling by a top constitutional body, which the protesters hope will derail President Macron's unpopular pension reform bid. Protesters opposing President Emmanuel Macron's unpopular plan to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64 marched around France in what they thought was a final show of anger before a decision on whether the measure meets constitutional standards or not. Now, if the Constitutional Council green-lights the reform, the bill that proposes to raise the retirement age from the current 62 years to 64 years will enter into force. Yet, the body has the power to reject the text fully or partially. And the Paris police has banned all gatherings outside the council from Thursday evening, that's yesterday, till Saturday morning, which is an attempt to reduce pressure on the council members as they make their decision. Joining me in the broadcast, here in the studio is my colleague Karthik Sharma. Karthik, you know, the optics, the visual optics at play over here, you know, smoke, tear gas, clashes with the police, vandalized cars, rubbish set ablaze. How are you reading into the visuals that are out there for the entire world to consume?
You see, France has a very strong social protection system, and pension is a very important part of it. Now, Macron wants to reform the pension system for one reason, because it's adding billions of dollars. Like India, when we said we are going to have an Agniveer scheme because OROP, post-OROP fund out, India had a problem whereby the pension money which was going for the army was more than they were able to invest in the heavy machine. Now, in France, what was happening, is still going to happen is, that France will continue to spend money, billions of dollars, on pension. Now, in a systematic way, from 2023 till 2030, these reforms will be put in place. They will be put up before the Constitutional Council, and the French government will get a green signal from them. See, we must understand, by raising the age by 2 years to 64,
Right.
The French law is saying that you need to work for your extras so that we don't add new pensioners, one. Secondly, you need to work in the government for 42 years to earn a full pension. So even in this, you have a full pension who have worked for 42 years, and then you have a sizable number of those who will be getting a part of the pension since they have taken a voluntary retirement, or they have not completed 42 years, or maybe they complete 40 years. The trade unions, which have paralyzed the entire French system, they are saying you tax the rich. France has got billions of dollars, you tax the rich, you tax them, and after taxing them, you divert that money for the social protection scheme. But the French government is saying that you cannot just tax the rich, because it completely destroys the fabric of their liberal capital order, whereby you incentivize the industrialists and get more money by creating jobs. So it's a battle between ideology, it's a battle between trade union, and it's also a change in the way French government has worked under Macron. Macron has taken a right turn. He was a left liberal guy, but after a lot of immigrant-related attacks in France, and especially in context of Charlie Hebdo, there's a complete right turn which Macron has taken, both in politics and in economics.
And is referendum the only way to go for the people of France? There's a referendum on the cards as well that the government thinks is going to work out in their favor. But is it the only way to go?
Because a referendum would make any of these protests unconstitutional. Right now, these protests are violent. Right now, these protests, a part of them have turned criminal. A part of the protest has violated the civic norms. But these protests are not unconstitutional. So my understanding is that these protests will become unconstitutional if referendum is in place.
And I mean, you spoke about Emmanuel Macron. Take a look at the visits he's been taking to various EU states, right from Amsterdam to China. What next for Emmanuel Macron? I mean, we've got this background behind us. It says Trump in jail, and right below it, the protesters are also demanding for Macron to be put in jail.
You know, these visuals are very benign. If I say what has happened in various parts of France, the cars have been burned, the restaurants have been burned, the places have been ransacked, the police have been very strict. Entire French economy is hit because of the protest. And Mr. Macron is in a very tough spot. You know, Mr. Macron is in a tough spot domestically. Mr. Macron is also in tough spot because, you know, he tried to, I would say, persuade Xi Jinping very unsuccessfully. So he came back empty-handed. So, you know, France, even before the Ukraine war, wanted to be the mediator. You know, the winter wars of Finland were put to an end by the French intervention, whereby a part of the Finland territory was ceded to the Soviet Union. They even gave away a port. And I think there was a transaction of money which took place, and then the Finland had to do away with its army. So French always had this habit of being a mediator. So Mr. Macron is in a political tough spot. One, he has not been able to do that traditional role vis-a-vis Ukraine. He has not been able to take an independent role with Xi Jinping in China. He's facing pension protests in France, and pension is something which is creating problems in a number of societies with an aging population. How much money are you going to put for the welfare? And the problem is, how much money are you going to divert for the employment? If the olders have to be taken care of, the young also need to be given the opportunity. But this is the problem of the Anglo-Saxon societies, or even newer societies in India, where old people don't stay with their children. They stay separately. They need to be fended separately. They need a social support system. Without that, they will be completely out on road. So there is an anxiety within the old France. What happens to a social protection system? After World War II, the Western capital order created a very robust welfare system. Norway, Sweden, Finland, the Danes, you know, despite being an abashed a capital order, they had a support structure. Mr. Macron is tinkering with it, and that is why you have the problem. It's unimaginable that in a liberal country like France, where the French Revolution took place, it's about fraternity, enlightenment, equality and liberty, you have people burning cars, destroying restaurants, and I think this might create a stronger support for a right-wing organization which can marry into India like Labharti politics of France and come to power. Right has given a very close shave to Macron. And Macron is on a very sticky wicket in France. That is why Macron needs to get his economy right. He has taken a very tough decision. It's like farm reforms of India.
Right.
But the government blinked. Because middlemen are well entrenched in the Punjab's politics. They are social constituents. So in this case, trade unions are very important.
So if we try and draw a correlation, you know, I mean, in terms of the optics, there's quite the contrast. I mean, we wouldn't see a place like Connaught Place getting ransacked like people we see on these visuals. Our lathis would replace the tear gas over there, or let's say the water cannon and barricades. That's what we're used to. But are there any takeaways or any lessons for India here, particularly?
I think the biggest lesson is that you need to manage your old population. You need to have a support structure, but you can't divert your money. The Agniveer is a creation of the pension crisis of the Indian Army. Agniveer is the creation of that. Agniveer wouldn't have happened. So the French system is also very social in a way. It's capitalist, but you have strong labor unions and they take the call. It's like Israel. The Indian embassy got shut because there was a trade union strike in Israel, but that was for a different thing. They were fighting for the rights of the court, and Israelis across the world, they shut their embassies because somehow most of them are part of one or other trade unions. So trade unions are still important. In India, trade unions are not important anymore, but in certain Western countries like Israel or in France, trade unions call the shot. So what we are witnessing is trade unions calling the shot in France.
If we were to jump the gun, and I know I'm putting you in a spot here, what do you think is going to happen? A green light from the council? Or
I think the
will be some
Constitutional Council
caveats?
is going to give a green light to Emmanuel Macron. There might be more violence in the streets of France, but pension reform is a bitter pill which the French economy needs to swallow.
Well, absolutely. Many thanks, Karthikeya, for joining us here
Kabir.
in the studio. What next for Emmanuel Macron? Well, we'll have to wait and find out. This sudden right turn. Do we have more surprises in store when we're looking at France? The clouds completely filled with tear gas, especially when we're looking at the Bastille Plaza. What next will the Bastille Plaza witness? Well, we'll have to find out. Slipping into a quick break, content continues on News 9 Live. Don't go anywhere.